Today's episode of the GoldCast is sponsored by Freedom. Freedom, Ray. That's what this episode is sponsored by. And when I think of freedom, Ray, you know what I think of? Not only do I think of being free, because this is America, I also think about the G.I. Joe whose name was Spirit, the first Native American G.I. Joe ever created, and his bald eagle, whose name was Freedom. Can you think of anything more G.I. Joe than a bald eagle named Freedom?
No, I'm pretty sure that's as clear cut as it gets with the G.I. Joe franchise.
Absolutely. And the reason we're talking about freedom is because today's episode, we're going to talk about Eddie Debartolo. Oh, yeah, we're going there. We're entering that realm. Here we go. But before we get started, Raymond, why don't you let them know, where can they find us?
You can always like us on Facebook.com/TheGoldCast, and you can also follow us on Twitter at @_Goldcast, and be sure to subscribe to us via Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Stitcher, all under the same moniker, The Goldcast. Like, subscribe, and comment, because we certainly want to hear your take on today's topics, which are two pretty big topics. One that is Niner-centric, one that is NFL-centric. So definitely chime in.
Definitely. So as we mentioned, we're going to talk about Eddie D and his getting pardoned for the 1998 scandal that effectively ended his tenure as the owner of the 49ers. That's our first topic. And then our second topic is this new, very controversial playoff format. We're going to be talking about that. But first, as always, the greatest fanalist in the game is here. Your professor of fanalism, he's in the building too. And guess what? Class is in session, so let's go.
San Francisco, are you ready? This is the GoldCast.
Boom! Welcome to another edition of the GoldCast. We are the voice of the Bay. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Solis the First, baby.
Boom!
We'll see you next time. Just kidding.
It never gets old. It really doesn't. So, Raymond, let's talk about this. So, first of all, I want to make something very clear on this week's edition of the GoldCast. Raymond and I, we try to keep the GoldCast pretty void of any political discussions. Wouldn't you agree with that, Raymond?
Yes, that's very intentional.
I think, yes, very intentional. I think we only did one episode ever about Colin Kaepernick. We've mentioned him over the years, you know, at various points, mentioned him, but we only did one episode that ever even addressed the whole Colin Kaepernick situation, and that was, I think, like the first time it was even noticed. You remember that? Way long time ago.
Yeah, it's pretty far back there.
Yeah. So, having said that, this is not going to be a political discussion. We're not here to discuss politics, but we are here to talk about one Donald Trump pardoning Mr. Eddie Debartolo for the scandal that he was involved in involving a riverboat gambling license he was trying to get in Louisiana. So let me see if I understand this correctly, Raymond, and then you tell me if I got this right. So here's what happened initially. Okay, so back in like 97, 98, Eddie D is trying to get this gambling license for a riverboat to go on the river in Louisiana. What
right,
river?
For a casino.
For a casino. Yes, exactly. So he's trying to get this, and the then governor, the governor at the time, Edwin Edwards, which is what a name. I mean, there's alliteration, and then there's having the same name twice. That's essentially what this is. There's alliteration, Peter Parker, Matt Murdock, Billy Bean. But then there's Edwin Edwards, which is basically the same name twice. It's like Rudy Rudiger, where you're kind of like, that's kind of the same name twice. That'd be like if my name was Rudy Rudyard or Rudy Rodolphimus. I don't know. You know what I mean? Having the same name twice, that's weird. And that should have been your first clue that there was something shady about this Louisiana governor. I don't trust a man named Edwards.
Yeah. Never trust a man with two first names.
And especially if they're the same first name twice. It shows a lack of creativity. So Eddie Debartolo, the former Louisiana governor, then Governor Edwin Edwards, tells Mr. Debartolo, in order for you to get this license, to help secure this casino license, I'm going to need $400,000 from you. Which
is that what he said, or did Eddie offer it to him, or was it mutual? I just don't know the details of that.
Well, according to the articles I've read, this is what Edwin Edwards was asking for. And in fact, he was asking from several different people, several different companies who were trying to get these casino gambling licenses on the river.
Oh, so he was competing. So there was a couple of...
I don't know if it was competing. I think there might have been several licenses, but he was asking the same of everybody, right? So he had to plead guilty to failing to report a felony. So that was a felony. Edwin Edwards, Eddie was performing a felony on Eddie Debartolo. So there's Eddie D, and then there's Eddie E in this situation. So by not reporting that Eddie E was trying to was asking for this $400,000, which was basically just a wink bribe, essentially. By failing to report it, this is what got him in trouble, and he basically what happened was that he pled guilty in this situation. He had to pay a $1 million fine and was given 2 years probation in return for his testimony against Edwards. So he did testify against Edwards. He was banned from the NFL for a year. Okay? And then when he came back, he basically had to make a decision on what to do. Should he keep the team or should he not? And I have a great quote on this that he had mentioned. This is great. I want to read this to you because I've actually never really heard this before. This is very interesting stuff right here. So he said, when he came back to the team, okay, after his suspension from the NFL was over, he said, truthfully, the team really wasn't taken away from me. I think it's been a misnomer for many, many years. Commissioner Tagliabue, is that how you say his name?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I don't know which article you're referring to.
He was just a former commissioner of the NFL at the time. Commissioner Tagliabue did obviously suspend me, but as I was going through negotiations with my family, we went through these negotiations, and we went through them with lawyers, obviously, and with a judge in Akron, Ohio. It did not come down to that team being taken. It came down to a decision that had to be made whether or not I wanted the 49ers or whether or not I wanted to take the other part of the company. And I figured at the time, and my sister Denise was involved totally, as was her family. I decided in that meeting in Akron, Ohio, that I thought it would be best that I took the other side and my tenure with the 49ers would end then and end there. I don't know if that story has ever been told, and it may have been, it may not have been. But it really was a choice. I figured there was more to do with my life at that time. I had succeeded and done a lot with the 49ers. It meant the world to me. But I figured with my daughters, with them getting older, and obviously with all of us getting older and having grandchildren at the time, and them planning on families, that it would be best for me to do what was best to be a good grandfather, be a good husband and dad, and do what I want to do, and maybe travel a little bit and spend more time with my family. So then
Actually sounds like Eddie D. If you're familiar with his, not you, but I mean in general, if you're familiar with how Eddie D treated the 49ers throughout his ownership, these quotes that you're reading, it sounds very, very consistent with what we know of his personality.
Absolutely. So he basically gave ownership up to Denise, who then now his nephew and her son, Jed York, run the team. So now what happened was, flash forward to 2020, and this week, Mr. Eddie Debartolo was pardoned for all the wrongdoings that he was found guilty of in this initial riverboat gambling scandal. Eddie D was pardoned for his nefarious business deals with Eddie E. And so now he's been pardoned. And part of the people that were helping make this happen was Jerry Rice, Charles Haley, Jim Brown, which didn't see that one coming. That was weird. but not bad weird, just weird. Just
Jim Brown has been working with the president. I think Ray Lewis was a part of that initial too, since like the very beginning, just being an advocate, for the black community. At least that's what I observed early on in his administration.
Yeah. So here's what it said. There were 4 Hall of Famers on hand: Jerry Rice, Charles Haley, Ronnie Lott, and Jim Brown, and they had met with Trump to discuss the pardoning of Debartolo. So they apparently had a hand on it. It's not very clear as to how far they did and how this really worked, but this is, I've never tweeted about Trump a single time in my entire life until this went down, and I said, he really got me with this one. He went for the jugular. He pardoned Eddie D, and I have to admit, I'm okay with it. I don't think Eddie D did anything wrong. Sometimes you gotta grease the monkey's palm to make that money happen.
We rehabilitate murderers and rapists, so this is a far cry, from that. This is one that I'm okay with, like totally 120% okay with.
I'll tell you what my biggest issue is with this situation, Ray. You want to know?
Yeah, let's hear it.
It's 22 years too late. That's my problem with this damn situation. Should have happened right there in '98. Can you imagine how many more Super Bowls we would have won had Eddie D stayed the owner? What I'm going to set the over-under at 3. I'm going to set it at 3 Super Bowls, Ray. So Eddie D stays the owner. Do we win under 3 or 3.5? So do we win under 3.5 or over 3.5?
I think at least 2 more.
So you're gonna say you're taking the under on 3.5?
Yeah, because Jeff Garcia was there and Terrell Owens was there, and I think if Eddie D was there, it wouldn't have been Jeff Garcia who left the Niners. It would have been Terrell Owens, because they when those two were feuding and there was an ultimatum given, they sided with Terrell Owens. But we all know, any football fan knows that in a situation like that, if you have to choose between, and by the way, Jeff Garcia was a 4-time Pro Bowl quarterback, so he was no slouch. If you have to choose between the quarterback position and a dynamic wide receiver, who is the player that is more capable of carrying the team on a game-by-game basis, on a consistent game-by-game basis? The answer is undoubtedly the quarterback. So if he was there, I think Jeff Garcia would have stayed. I think Terrell Owens probably would have left. And, we would have filled those positions with other roles. We had okay players back then. J.J. Stokes was okay. He wasn't consistent. We had okay tight ends. Nobody really came in to do what Brent Jones did until Vernon Davis and now George Kittle. So we did have a lull there, but we do have a historic, a history of doing pretty well in the tight end position. And we had great running backs. We've had great running backs since the 80s all the way up to now.
Was Garrison Hurst on the team during Jeff Garcia's tenure?
It might have been. He was great. He was great every year. He was great. He played for him, and then after him was Frank Gore, and we all know how that turned out. That was 10 terrific years. So, Niners hit well on running backs. They weren't Walter Paytons, but extremely good backs. And in Frank Gore's case, he's most likely going to go to the Hall.
Yeah, he definitely is most likely going to go to the Hall. So I'm down with that. I'm down with 2. How do you feel, Raymond? I want to hear, how do you feel? Eddie D is now a free man. And I say that as if he's been in shackles this whole time. As if Eddie D can finally walk the streets of America free. Him and his bird freedom. So tell me, what do you think about Eddie D being pardoned? I think this is a great day in American history, a great day in American sports history, maybe the greatest day in American sports history.
If there was ever a time to echo the president's catchphrase, I think this is, this week, or at least, the day that this happened was certainly worthy of saying, and I'm not talking about it's a rephrase of the president's catchphrase, which you put so eloquently when this first broke, which is Trump made the 49ers great again.
He did. Trump made the 49ers great again. And if you would have told me when he became the president 4 years ago that in his final year, he single-handedly would make the 49ers great again, I would have told you were crazy. But heavens to Betsy, here we are. Here we are, and the 49ers are great again. Incredible. These are incredible stuff. I love that Jerry Rice had a hand in this. Jerry Rice still bringing in touchdowns. By the way, I wanted to say something to you.
Yeah, still scoring, off the field, retired, still the GOAT. God.
Yes, still the GOAT. Still scoring for the Niners.
There's no ball he can't catch. Jeez.
Ronnie Lott still making tackles, still stopping things from happening.
Man, yeah, Lott making the big stop. Nope, we're gonna put a stop to this felony on his record. And Jerry Rice saying, nope, I got it. I got the pardon. Boom, one-handed. Charles Haley with the assist.
This is incredible. An incredible play from three of our Hall of Fame players. Props to Jim Brown. But I got to give this one to the 49ers. As we typically do in San Francisco, we only recognize what's going on in San Francisco. The rest of the world doesn't really matter. That's just the way it is.
Yes. Yeah, picture the 49ers at the epicenter, and then picture the earth rotating around the San Francisco 49ers. That's how it works. That's how it works here at the GoldCast.
We don't make the rules. We just deliver the rules. That's all. We just abide by the rules. It's not our fault we're the greatest sports city of the last 10 years. This is the cross we have to bear, and a heavy cross it is. All these trophies, they're so heavy.
Yeah, the only reason why we're even bringing politics in today's game is because politics today revolved around the 49ers. Or at least, this week. Not the other way around. You got to go to the, what is it? What's that cast called? The Orange Cast.
For more presidential.
Yes, the Washington Cast.
Exactly.
The Oval Cast.
The blonde hairpiece cast.
Yeah.
That if you want more presidential news, but this is a great day. I'm gonna say. I'm gonna say Eddie D still winning Super Bowls. Still winning.
He's 73 years old. He's worth nearly $3 billion, and he's still winning for the Niners.
Doing it for the Niners. He was like, you know what? The Niners might not have won a Super Bowl this year, but I'm gonna win a Super Bowl this year. And so he won his own championship.
Yeah, exactly. They couldn't bring home the win, but you know what? I'm gonna bring home a win.
Yes, he brought home a win. It's incredible stuff. Congratulations to Eddie D. We're proud of you. The 49ers are proud of you. San Francisco's proud of you. And gosh darn it, America is proud of you. Props to you.
And gosh darn it, people like him.
They do. They like Eddie D. Okay, so next up, Raymond, let's talk about this very controversial rule change. So it looks like what they want to do is, and it's a part of the CBA, so there's a couple loopholes here. So let's just talk about the NFL playoff rule change that has been discussed, okay? So here's how this works, just so everyone understands this. What they want to do is they want to expand from 12 teams to 14 teams. What that would do, here's what the resulting playoff field, this is what it would look like, okay? So that means there would be only the first seed the number one seed would get the bye. The number 2 seed would have to play on wild card weekend against the 7th seed. So we would go from 4 wild card games. This is what we have right now. We would go from 4 wild card games to 6 wild card games. That's a lot.
That's crazy.
Okay. It is crazy. So 6 wild card games is what it would expand to. Then everything else would basically stay the same. We would have 4 divisional round games, 2 conference championships, and 1 Super Bowl.
But only one team from each conference would have the bye.
The bye. the first seed. That's it, which would make the first seed more important than ever. And now the second, even the second
seed's got to play
all 3 weekends.
So that means Kansas
tough.
City and Green Bay would have played under those new rules in this version.
Yeah, let's talk about this. I don't believe in trolling people on Twitter. I don't. That's not my thing. Even when I think someone says something really dumb, I try very hard most of the time to never say anything. But here's what they said. Someone said, I'm paraphrasing, but before you complain, just think about this. On Wild Card Weekend, Pittsburgh would have had to play Kansas City, and Green Bay would have had to play the LA Rams. So just think about that before you complain. To which my response was, who cares? I didn't write this. I just thought, I wouldn't have wanted to see those games. Those sound stupid.
No.
That sounds like that's stupid. Who cares?
Here's the problem. Yeah.
I wanted to see Green Bay playing the divisional round like the second-seeded champs they were. That's what I wanted to see. And let's talk about this. Let me tell you the teams that would have gone from the last 10 years. You ready for this?
Oh, my God.
You ready? Okay, here we go.
Do you have the records, too?
Yeah, I have the records, too. Oh, these
all right, I got to hear this.
Yeah. 2019, Pittsburgh was 8-8. Los Angeles, 9-7. 2018, Pittsburgh again, 9-6-1. Minnesota, 8-7-1. Well, some stellar records. 2017, Baltimore, 9-7. Detroit, 9-7. Okay, I can live with those. 2016, Tennessee, 9-7. Tampa Bay, 9-7. Oh man, the 2016 Titans and the 2016 Buccaneers. Woo boy, would have loved to see those guys in the playoffs. The 2015 New York Jets at 10-6 and the Atlanta Falcons at 8-8. Oh yeah, the New York Jets anytime in the playoffs. What a doozy that was.
Only one team with a respectable record out of everyone that you just named.
2014, the Houston Texans at 9-7 and the Philadelphia Eagles at 10-6. I wonder if their bald eagles named Freedom. In 2013, Pittsburgh again 8-8. God, Pittsburgh would have been in a billion times. And Arizona 10-6, another respectable record. Pittsburgh 2012, Pittsburgh again 8-8. Chicago 10-6. 2011, Tennessee 9-7. Chicago Bears 8-8. And in 2010, San Diego Chargers at 9-7 and the New York Giants at 10-6. So I find this, there would have been, of the 20 teams that would have gone, there would have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams with 8 wins. There would have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 teams with 9 wins, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams with 10 wins. That's those aren't great numbers. At least we have no one under 8 wins would have made it, but 8 wins is pretty mediocre. I'm sorry. Do you really think a 7th seed is going to get all the way to the Super Bowl and win a 7th seed?
No.
No, there's no way. So now here's the thing. So now we've cleared up. So here's the thing. So this has been essentially been included into the new CBA, the new collective bargaining agreement between the NFL Players Association and the NFL ownership.
Yeah, these are just 2 of like 100 items that are on these sheets. There's a ton of stuff. A lot of it has to do with pay, like pensions and stuff for players who are no longer in the league. There's increase in rookie salaries. There's new practice rules for pads, how many consecutive days in pads. There's a whole bunch of stuff, but these 2 particular rules we're talking about are the juiciest.
Definitely the juiciest. So now this has been included. But in order for this to go into effect next season, this coming season, the players would have to vote and agree with the current collective bargaining agreement. And if we know anything about CBAs,
the Players Association more specifically,
their union, they have to agree on this. They have to agree on this collective bargaining agreement, the entire CBA, not just the playoff rules, but every single item that is listed on there. Now, the chances of them doing that are pretty slim. It usually goes through various levels, and the chance of a strike is always very high, very, very high. So I wouldn't hold my breath.
To me, the 17 game one is the biggest one. Like,
so why don't you talk about that with everybody?
Well, 17 regular season games. So you subtract one of the preseason games to offset it, so that they're not playing, 17 plus 4, 21 games. You're still playing the exact same amount of games. The only difference is now one of those preseason games now counts towards the regular season. The problem I have with this is injury. That's the biggest issue with that. So you have 17 regular season games plus, an extra wild card game. I mean, those wild card games are still going to be played on the same weekend. It's not like you have 2 weekends of wild cards, but it's still more games, and only one team gets to bye, which means every other team in the tournament, 6 teams have to play an additional week. So they're playing 17 weeks plus whatever they manage to get through in the tournament. And I know that's to me, I mean, it took a long time for a wild card team to win a Super Bowl. And didn't it end up being the Giants against the Patriots?
Was that the first wild card win?
16-0? I don't know. It might have been. Maybe we'll have someone fact check that. We don't fact check over here.
No.
But but imagine the daunting task of now that new hurdle is going to be there. And to me, so I just don't think that. I just don't know if there's enough compensation in these payment adjustments. Because these payment adjustments the ones that are in this fact sheet, and you can go online to look at it. It's like 4 or 5 pages long. It's like 3. Actually, yeah, it's like 3 pages long. But the parts that talk about payment, I don't know if that's enough to, equate to, yeah, I'll play an extra game. I'll risk injury in a sport that's already, brutal in terms of injury, especially the repercussions of those injuries. I mean, players are retiring early now more than they ever have before because of, the research and the science that's been, revealed surrounding the aftermath, the after effects of these injuries. And I just don't know if that's worth it. If I was a player, there'd be two ways to look at this. The first way would be like, all right, I get more money, but I got to play an extra goddamn week. And then the other side of it too, as far as the playoffs is going, like if I was a player, I would be apprehensive towards the former proposal. And then against the latter proposal for the playoffs, I think a part of me would actually kind of be excited about that. I'd be like, hey, I have a shot now. Or I have an increased opportunity to win a title. So from a player perspective, it absolutely makes sense. From a fan perspective, I don't want 8-8 teams and 9-7 teams competing in the tournament. There's a reason those teams aren't allowed in there. To me, 10-6 is respectable. That one's okay. I get that one. So, maybe you make adjustments where here's what I think. I mean, overall, this is what I think. I think that the current format is the best iteration that exists right now in the league. And of all the 3 sports too, by the way. I don't like the 1-game playoff in baseball. I don't like that at all. And I think basketball should have a wild card round too. But with football, I think the version they have is perfect the way it is near perfect. It's not perfect. I mean, we had a 7-9 Seahawks team go to the playoffs one year, and that was just embarrassing for the NFL, embarrassing for the West, embarrassing if you live in Seattle and you like neon green, just embarrassing if you believe in a fictitious bird, just embarrassing all across the board. And so that's the one flaw in the system, is that every division winner is awarded a playoff spot. But the truth is, if you have a 10-6 team in the NFC South, and that 10-6 team has a better record than the best team in the NFC West, in my opinion, that should default to that record. It'd be like, sorry, nobody from the NFC West gets to go to the tournament today because none of you guys were freaking good enough to get inside the tournament. Therefore, we're going to award it to the next best team, who was 10-6, who had a better record than the best team in your division. I think that would be the one adjustment I would make to the current format, so that we don't have another mishap like the Seahawks getting in.
Okay, so break that down again. How exactly does that work? And this is also weird. Think about this. You could be the 10-6. You could be a 10-6, 7 seed, but then a 7-9 number 1 seed in the NFC West, for instance, Seattle, could actually be ranked higher than you when you're a 10-6, 7 seed. I don't understand how that works at all.
I don't know how that works either, and not sure how they're going to do it because the division. Well, the seeding is not based on division anyway. Seeding is just based on record and strength of schedule in the event of a tie, and if you played one another in the event of a tie. So at least as far as seeding goes, I think the seeding will be fine because the seeding is reflective of your record and everything else I just mentioned. So we won't have if the Detroit Lions are 11-5, which would be a blessing and an anomaly in the world of football, then they would be appropriately seeded according to the other teams in that conference. And then anybody who was if you had maybe another 11-5 team, then the seeding would be broken down just like it's always been broken down. So I think that part's not fine. The part I have issue with is there's an extra playoff game. And to me, you're inviting, this is the part that bothers me the most. And I've already said it, but I'll say it again. You're allowing mediocrity to now muddle the tournament. So the tournament is given the best of the best, and there's already a huge disparity most of the time. Now, NFL is the one sport of the 3 major sports where any team, regardless of how mediocre or how injured they were or how much they've stumbled into the tournament, where one team can really best another team regardless of what their seeding was. We saw that with the New York Giants and Eli Manning going all the way up against the 16-0 Patriots and besting them in the fourth quarter. And we've seen that. But there is still, in this past season, this past tournament was a very good indicator with the exception of the Ravens, who just really kind of ran out of steam because exhaustion exhaustion is a part of this sport, and I think they just got exhausted. And the bye really disrupted their momentum.
And streaks do not work well in football, but that's neither here nor there.
They don't. They're really hard to pull off, which is why only one team has ever won the whole thing without losing a game. And by the way, they played 2 less games in that era. And so, but by putting that extra game in there, you're inviting, in my opinion, you're inviting shitty teams into the tournament. And in my opinion, I don't think shitty teams belong in the tournament. And like I was saying, so there's already a huge disparity. What we saw, for the most part, we saw the best teams win in the tournament. The Niners steamrolled both teams on the way to the Super Bowl, and we saw, Chiefs won. The Titans were the only anomaly in the tournament this year, and they played good, sound football, but they ran out of gas too, and they made some bad decisions in that game to lose it. But the point is, most of the teams, there's been some crazy seasons where you have upsets, but what we saw this past season is very indicative of what I like to see. I'm not saying I like to see the dominant team win. I'm just saying the teams I expect to win, that's typically how it's supposed to work. It's more predictable in the NBA than it is in the NFL. The NFL is more unpredictable, which is why the playoffs, I think, are so exciting, because it's you feel like if your 10-6 team gets in, you think you've got a shot against that 13-3 team or that 14-2 team, or that.
And you legitimately do. You really do.
You totally do. You totally do. You totally do. But to me, I just think I don't mind that. But what I do mind is an 8-8 team or a 9-7 team getting into the tournament when to be honest, they had no business being in the tournament in the first place, because under the original format, there's a reason why they didn't get in. You just weren't good enough. You weren't good enough, so you don't deserve to be in the team. You barely won, half your games, or you edged one more game over 500. 9-7 isn't good. You lost nearly half your games.
8-8 is not good. 8-8 is very unimpressive. You're 500. You lost 8 games.
Yes, and under the rules, an 8-8 team, you're only a few players away from turning into a 10-6 or 11-5 team. So it's okay. It's not the end of the world, and 8-8's a good position to be in. 6-10's not bad either. You you're going to get a pretty good draft pick, and that draft pick can potentially turn things all around. We saw that happen with Nick Bosa coming onto the defense after our 6-10 season, 6-10, and then got derailed by the ACL tear from Garoppolo. But then we had a 4-12 season turn into a 13-3 season. That got us a key defensive player on the line of scrimmage. But, that's why it's set up the way it is, so that teams that are mediocre or teams that are, below average have a shot going forward via the draft, and, of course, always via free agency if they, negotiate, if their GM's a savvy negotiator. But, I'm going off the rails. But going back to the original thing, I just don't – to me, I think the Players Association would be foolish to sign this agreement, to agree to – I think they'd be more comfortable with the playoff format than they would be 17 games. I think ultimately the 17 games is the anchor that keeps this from sailing. That to me is the more consequential change to the sport in terms of health. And I don't think you can necessarily put a price on your health if it's not there. What good is the money if you're not capable of being fully comprehensive to enjoy it from your injuries of playing that extra game. So to me, that doesn't make sense. So, from a fan perspective, it's like, hey, get an extra week of games. I personally can't stand Thursday night games. And I don't like the playoff format. And just from a player perspective, I think I'd be excited about it. But from a fan perspective, I think it's a horrible decision. It's just, it muddles the tournament. I don't know how you feel about it, but to me, it's what's the term? Not muddle, but I mean, in addition,
it dilutes the competition.
There you go. That's it. It dilutes it. Yes, that's it.
So here's a rule change that the NFL should adopt immediately in place of all these silly extra games. And here's what it is, Raymond. The loser of the Super Bowl, or maybe even the NFC or AFC depends. Maybe it's the loser of the Super Bowl, or maybe it's loser of the Super Bowl. I think that's the way it goes. I think it's the best way to do this. I had a couple other proposals. I don't want to confuse it. What you get at the end of the game. So at the end of the game, they hand the Lombardi Trophy to the Kansas City Chiefs, and they've got the Lombardi Trophy. Bam, awesome. And they turn to the 49ers, and they go, and your consolation prize, San Francisco, is a Money in the Bank contract. And they hand him a gold Money in the Bank contract. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with the Money in the Bank contract, this is in WWE. It's one of the greatest inventions of all time. And after WrestleMania, which is their Super Bowl, they have the Money in the Bank competition, right? The Money in the Bank pay-per-view tournament. And the way it works is they have this contract that's in a gold briefcase that says Money in the Bank. And what that contract enables the winner, the person who gets in order to get it in WWE, you have to climb a ladder, you have to grab the briefcase, you have to pull it off this hook, and you got to bring it down, and then it's yours. And when you have the Money in the Bank contract, this guarantees you, the competitor, a one-way shot to fight the champ any day, anywhere in an arena if you guys are both in the building at the same time. And it's like 80% of all people who've ever had the Money in the Bank belt have won the title. Like because generally what you do is you wait till they're getting beat up, or if they're in the middle, they just lost the match, you just go run out. You hand the contract to the ref, they automatically start the match, and you go. Now, what I think they should have done is as soon as they handed that Lombardi Trophy to the Kansas City Chiefs, they turn around and they hand a Money in the Bank contract to the San Francisco 49ers, so that any time in the next 12 months between now and the next Super Bowl, if when the 49ers are ready, they can run onto the field, cash that contract, and immediately force the Chiefs to play the Super Bowl again. And you know what you do? You do it when they're not expecting it, like week 4 of the preseason, or you do it like week 16 of the
both teams happen to be in New Orleans in the off season, and they cash it in.
They cash it.
Superdome will be
go.
open this weekend for a Money in the Bank match.
The Money in the Bank. San Francisco's cashing in their Money in the Bank. They're going to compete for the Super Bowl again. That's what we need. That's what the NFL needs. The NFL needs a Money in the Bank contract. That's what this needs. I'm tired of these silly games. Give me some Money in the Bank. Give me an opportunity to get a rematch for that Super Bowl anytime in the next 12 months. Now that brother, that is good football. That is some drama. That's what I propose, Ray. I propose the Money in the Bank contract be introduced. Screw the rest of this. That's what we want to see.
Not a bad proposal. I mean, in all seriousness, I think neither of these changes are very good for the sport. And I know there was an article, or it came out. Remember, I don't know if you remember this. This is an obscure one, but Mark Cuban, the owner for the Dallas Mavericks, came out and said that the NFL, that the one thing, business 101 is not to get greedy, because when you get greedy, you unnecessarily stuff your pig, and then things go awry after that, and that 10 years from now the NFL would be in that same position, is what he predicted. Now we're only 6 years into that prediction of his, but if rules like this got implemented, I could see a scenario where 4 years from now that something like this would eventually come back to bite the NFL, and they would perhaps have to revert some of these rules, or they'd have to do something drastic, or maybe adjust them. I couldn't see them going backwards. I could only see them maybe going laterally. That's usually how the NFL operates. They don't like to regress. They like to progress. And in the event of not being able to progress, they make, lateral movements, because that's just not, it's part of business too. You don't want to necessarily have you don't want to give off the perception that you're moving backwards from something that you thought was a good decision. But anyways, that was just something interesting that I read this week, where someone brought up the Mark Cuban prediction. He's only 6 years into it, but something like this could very much fall into, or play into that prediction. And by the way, Mark Cuban's pretty smart fucking dude. Last time I checked. Also a billionaire.
Also billionaire. A pretty smart fucking dude. That's a great way to end this episode. I agree, Raymond. They should not change these rules, but they are inevitable. I do think that you
think they're inevitable? So you think we're going to go to 17 and 6 wildcard games?
I think we're going to go to 6 wildcard games. I don't know about the 17 one. I'm not too sure about that. I also think for sure they need to drop that 4th preseason game, but the only reason they even said they keep it is because of the money, the revenue. God forbid the NFL owners lose any more money, because we know how bad they're hurting. So, you got to take every penny you can get when you're a poor NFL owner.
Yes, it's dire straits over there in NFL town.
It is dire straits in NFL town.
I agree that the preseason is pretty crappy, although I enjoy the preseason now more than I ever did when I was younger, just because I get excited about watching the draft picks and evaluating the draft picks.
Me too.
And sometimes I just kind of like seeing the new guy, the veterans in there. Like, this coming season, Nick Bosa is going to be a veteran, or at least, year 2. Year 3 is usually when you get tagged with the veteran moniker, but it's going to be fun seeing those guys get back into the swing of things, because, as we know, we haven't talked a lot about the Niners, or at least the Super Bowl, and who wants to. But what I will say is that what I've read is that the entire team is pretty hungry and seems like they're gearing up for revenge season.
Yeah, and I will say this it's very early, way too early, but this feels a little San Antonio Spurs after they lost the 2013 series to the Heat. This feels a little bit like the Kansas City Royals after they lost to the San Francisco Giants in the World Series, that the 2015 season for the Royals. It feels 2014 Spurs, 2015 Royals, where it's like, oh, these are some teams right now that really could go on the revenge tour. And this team is, I think, well poised to do it. So, but it does feel like there's a very singular focus, and that for them, there is no off season. They're just rolling right in and getting ready for next year.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is that it seems to be unanimous. It's not like there's one dude that's like, my God, I can't wait to go into free agency. It's Eric Armstead said, I'll take the franchise tag if it means I get to stay here and other guys get to stay too. Meaning like I'll take the franchise tag because it's guaranteed money anyways. And yeah, it's only 1 year. It's not a long term, but it's the trade-off is the team, I give more leverage to the front office to keep more key players together and have that continuity going into the next season, which, by the way, typically, especially in a sport that involves 11 guys to cooperate at any given play, that really does increase your chances of repeating.
It does. It absolutely does. And we will obviously talk more about that as we move on through the year. But what say you, GoldCast Nation? How do you feel? Eddie D is now walking the streets as a free man. How do you feel about Eddie D? How do you feel about these proposed NFL rule changes? Do you like the 17-game season? Do you like the playoffs? The six wild card games in the expanding from 4 games to 6 games on wild card weekend.
Ugh.
I know. How do you feel
so
about
gross.
this format? And do you think the 49ers are primed for a revenge season? Let us know. Go to youtube.com/thegoldcast and let us know there. That's a place where those are where all of our comments are left up. We're about ready, Ray. We need to do a mailbag real soon here because we got a lot. We got a lot.
This is if there's any episode to follow up with some mailbag, this is a great one. So remember the topics here, folks. It's Trump makes the Debartolo family and the 49ers great again. The NFL is trying to expand the sport into dangerous and just diluted territory, and of course the Niners really focused on getting what they felt they rightfully deserved a few Sundays ago.
They're making their own money in the bank contract, and I support it. All right, here we go. So concludes another edition of the GoldCast. We are the voice of the Bay. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Solis I, baby.
Boom. We'll see you next time. Same GoldCast time, same GoldCast channel.